Thank you. I think I've realized what the hardest part about writing a talk is. It's the fact that no matter how many times I write it and rewrite it, and I've rewritten the talk many, many times in the last few days, few weeks, I don't actually know what is appropriate, what the right thing to say is, until I'm actually standing in front of you, like I am now. Which means it's a bit like when you're filming. Munish knows this probably better than anyone. You spend the whole day filming, and then you use a minute or two for your actual footage. So, yeah, I've got my notes. This is just to show you. This is what I call my page of notes for my talk from hell. This is going to guide me during the course of this talk. And I've got another little complication. Just to check it's okay for Parami. Parina asked me to give a talk, and the theme of the talk was being an order member in 3 different cultures and countries. What inspires you? Anything you like. Now, I happened to get into email contact with Advaya Siddhi a week or 2 later, and she told me that actually I'm talking about celebrating the order. I thought, okay, I'd written 4 outlines of a talk by then, and I thought I'll just steer to the positive. And then I decided to scrub it all together and write a talk purely on celebrating the order. Only yesterday morning I realized that the celebrating the order talk wasn't really what I needed to say. So I veered back to the general thoughts and theme of the first talk. And I think I've actually got enough to say on celebrating the order to be passable. But it doesn't start like that. It starts with me talking about myself. And then celebrating the order will kind of emerge as a theme if all goes well and it doesn't get lost in the squiggle that's sort of around here. But yeah, celebrating the order, starting with just a bit of an introduction. I expect a lot know the bare outlines of my personal history, but maybe not everybody. I was born in Russia. At the age of 4, my mother married an American. I moved to the UK. I forgot Russian almost immediately. My name was changed from the Russian version to an English version. I grew up with an English name. And to cut a long story short, I decided to come back to Russia and went to France, to Paris, to work at the Buddhist Center, stayed there for 7 years. Long story, and eventually, one way and another, I found my way back to Moscow 6 years ago, where I've been working, relearning the language, doing my best to start up Dharma activities. But that's the overall context of my life. But I wanted to say something about how I started to get involved with the Dharma, because in a way, without understanding that, a lot of what follows doesn't make full sense. When I was 22, 23, I went traveling. I went to Thailand, then Australia. Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, then Australia, then to India. And in a way, my understanding, receptivity to things religious in general opened up during that time. Before I'd been a militant atheist, probably is the best way I can describe it. In Thailand, it was a Buddhist country, of course. It was a very friendly country as far as countries go, and it was a very beautiful country. I spent a few weeks on an island there. In a way, I was in very good conditions after quite a difficult, bordering on traumatic childhood, without going into the details. I found myself there. It was like I was on a long retreat. I didn't have any particular responsibilities, apart from being responsible for myself, really, for the first time in my life. I was traveling on my own. I didn't have, if I didn't do something, it wouldn't get done. If I didn't find out something, I'd be in trouble, to do with visas and traveling and so on and so forth. And as well as when I left Russia at the age of 4, there was a deep sense of going forth, or at least leaving behind the familiar. It was people had already started traveling. It wasn't uncommon, but it wasn't as common as I think it is today. We didn't have Facebook. I had a sense that I was leaving behind my friends at university. By that time, my mother had already moved on to America, so I didn't have a family home in the UK anymore. So it all felt quite destabilizing as well. But I felt happier. I appreciated beauty and natural beauty for the first time, or at least much more deeply. I started to think more deeply, and there was a sense of understanding things and a release of energy coming through that. And I remember walking across some rocks on the beach and really focusing on my feet. And it was like discovering mindfulness, discovering that if I focused, there would be, my whole sort of state of mind got calmer and more at ease. And I started to look at things for a few minutes at a time, like the sea and the beach and so on, which I'd never done before. And then I had an experience, which the only way I could describe it would be like there was two cliffs, and these were different parts of my psyche, and they kind of slammed together, and then suddenly once they'd closed, I wasn't aware of where the join had been. I was sitting in a bar in Malacca, in Malaysia. I had a half pint of lager, I think. There was a karaoke. And then suddenly this sort of experience came over me. It felt very calm, very stable. It felt like a lot of the fears and anxieties that invaded me fairly frequently up until that time had been calmed, and there was a sense of understanding. And I realized that was understanding that experience and in a way relating on the basis of that experience, that was what would give meaning to my life. So I started to look for something external to myself that corresponded. Later on, about a year later, by chance I met an older member, Arthur Darshan, who died sadly in 1999 when he was on a long retreat, living at Kukiloka. But we met by chance in Calcutta and then again in Gantok, and he taught me how to meditate. And he also gave me the Tibetan Book of the Dead seminar by Bhante Sangharakshita to read. He wasn't supposed to at the time, it's for Mitras only, but I'm very glad he did, because it was a very significant moment in finding something external to myself that corresponded to what I'd experienced internally. Then later again at Padmaloka, maybe 7 or 8 months later, Surata gave a talk, very wild, passionate talk, but one of the things that he said, encouraged everybody to do, was to read the Survey of Buddhism. And so I started reading the Survey of Buddhism, and really it was at that point that I decided to ask for ordination, because I felt that something really did match, did correspond, and could take further what I'd experienced internally. In a way, this is a strange thing. I only realized this fully quite recently, but what happened next was I started working at Windhorse Trading. I was ordained, and in a certain kind of sense, I felt like I was in a different world from everybody else. That isn't completely true. That's probably an exaggeration, or maybe a thought of on a black day or a black mood, but other people said the same thing to me from time to time, that they thought I was on a different planet, so... I started to ask myself what was going on, or what could I do about it. And the only reason, the only way out I could really come up with, the only thing that I could understand that would make it understandable, was that I somehow needed to go to Russia, reconnect with my Russian cultural conditioning, and that would kind of bridge a gap. The thing I think I only quite recently understood was that, in a way, my working ground during my whole order life, my whole life in Triratna, has been, well, Bhante talked about it in 15 points for new and old order members, and that was realizing the unity of the order. So, to cut a long story short, I find myself in Moscow, in a way looking to realize the unity of the order, looking to work to establish Triratna in Moscow. And the second part of the talk is kind of more to do with the conditions I find myself in there. Russia is quite a different place to a lot of countries where Triratna has been established. When I think of Triratna in the world, I think of the EU, America, Australasia, and India. All of the places that I mentioned, apart from India, are quite westernized. And in India, with the influence of Dr. Ambedkar, there's, and the particular conditions, social conditions there's quite a strong move to westernization. But my sense is that in Russia, these days, the fundamental qualities, the fundamental beliefs are more Christian than Western, more Christian than the age of reason, shall we say. Western values, some of them dear to people in the West, are not so dear to people in Russia. The family is has a much stronger place. In a family unit, you can expect really there to be no borders. If somebody doesn't work and they're in a family unit, you'd expect the other family members to support them. I see there's people often not working. When I was living in a hostel, which I lived in for 4 years in Moscow, I'd see people who just ask their parents, 25, 30-year-old people, especially women, for money to keep going. So the family, the institution of the family is stronger and different to what we are used to elsewhere. And also a sense of history. I think every country has their own particular version of history. And in Russia, there is, and there's less agreement between Russian version of history and Western version of history. It's actually, for me, not an easy area. History, current affairs, it's, my perspective on things is very different to the perspective of a lot of people in the order that I talk to. My sense is that we work on the level of our personal conditioning in the order more than we work on the level of our national conditioning. And part of our national conditioning are the set of views that make up history. And in a way it's easier to do that because we're more different personally. If we all live in the same country, we probably meet people that have the same general idea of history, the same general ideas, view on the world. Having lived in the UK as a Russian for 30 years, I met a lot of people who didn't look at the world kind of intuitively or half-consciously or maybe unconsciously, the unconscious beliefs and views that we bring to discussions. Anyway, people in England didn't have the same views as me. So I sense, yes, this is an area for practice, an area for that I think it would help us be a more international order if we brought more attention to looking at understanding people who see the world very differently, in a nutshell. And maybe you could say understanding people who, trying to understand people who live beyond the borders of the Western world, because they can often seem quite foreign and difficult to understand, and often in some cases not always as friendly as we would wish them to be. But anyway, yes. Setting up a religion. I didn't mean to say setting up a religion. I don't know what I just wrote. I just read what I wrote, and I didn't mean to write what I wrote. But working to establish Triratna in Russia. It also has peculiarities, working to set up Triratna in Russia. There's a law which means we can't register as a religious organization or a religious group, which basically means we can't operate as a charity. We don't have a legal front. So I've started off first holding classes in rented rooms in a spiritual center, and later inviting people to the apartment where I live to have courses there. I met with Bhante around the time that I started going to Moscow, and after having explained the situation, he said, well, go to Russia as an individual, even if you're not a member of an and not as a member of an organization, even if you're a member of an organization in elsewhere, which I thought was a very good, simple, but quite profound piece of advice. In a way, you could say he was saying, well, just do what it takes to get things started, to operate, to start teaching the Dharma there. And I remember Vasika invited Bhante to the Buddhist Center in Paris, and Bhante agreed and came and gave a question and answer session. And one of the questions, I believe from Mani Badri, was about Paris and communities. Nobody looked likely to start living in communities together. Parisians tend to like to live on their own. And Bhante's response was, as far as I remember, advice was to just work on deepening your going for refuge, both individually and collectively, and see what emerges. And in a way, I've taken this advice very much to heart. In Moscow, I'm just doing what I can in terms of teaching meditation, teaching the Dharma, publishing books online and in book form, publishing videos, meeting people, getting to know people, and I kind of get a sense that I haven't got the vision of how Triratna will operate in Russia, but just step by step, I'm working towards that. It's a bit like when I was a child. I remember my family, we got a giant jigsaw puzzle. It was one of those jigsaw puzzles with 1,000, 1,500 pieces, and you just start trying to find 2 bits of the jigsaw that come together. And then after a little while, you have different clumps of jigsaws that you formed. And then I remember the moment where we actually worked out that this bit you could actually join up to this bit, and this bit you could join up to this bit and this bit. So actually, a good chunk of the jigsaw's done, and you've got a framework. And at the moment with the jigsaw puzzle, I haven't got to the point of joining the bits up. I'm just working on the little individual bits, just doing what I can to find a way of presenting the Dharma in a way that's attractive to people in Russia. It already has worked to some extent, but there's more I feel that we can do. I'm close to time, so I'll start winding up. 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. On the theme of unity, my sense is that I'm looking to try and see how Triratna will express itself, coming to life more and more in Russia, in a way that's unified, but at the same time unified with the rest of the order, with the rest of the movement, but at the same time appropriate to Russia, to the particular circumstances there. I've also found that being in Russia and finding out who I am more, or the conditioning that in a way I chose to be reborn into, in a karmic sense, that I left when I was 4, when I went to start living in the UK. As I'd hoped, I find being more in touch with Russian culture and Russian people helps me be more in touch with everybody. I kind of need to know who I am more and more deeply, objectively and subjectively, to communicate more authentically and deeply with other people, whoever they may be, whatever their particular conditioning is. So maybe if the talk had been called The Unity of the Order, it would have been a bit more of an appropriate talk. But I would like at least to celebrate the fact that our order is an order that seeks to go beyond all cultural, all class, all the limitations of all the different kinds of conditioning that we can encounter. I'm frequently heartened when I think of Bhante saying, as he said somewhere, that he thinks the best conditions for the order's health and stability is to reach out to people in as many different countries, in as many different classes in those countries as possible, i.e. to be to adapt the message of the Dharma to as many different people as possible, which is what I'm trying to do internally and externally. Thank you.